Welcome to the WanderLearn podcast. I'm your host, France Tapon. This is a short introduction to this episode, which is part of a 7-part series with a Mozambican who is named Julio Maria Muhorro. He is a power coach, facilitator, and speaker from Mozambique. Make sure you listen to the other episodes if you've missed them. And this episode, by the way, is brought to you by my patrons at patreon.com/ftapon. Go there and get some rewards. Thanks. What struck you about the Kenya and Tanzania, and maybe to some extent Ethiopia? What surprised you when you got there that was different than what you had known in Mozambique and South Africa? And sorry. You've also been to Zambia and Zimbabwe, right?
I've been to Zambia, Zimbabwe, right. Malawi as well.
Okay, so I want to just go through quickly all those different countries, like what you got there, and you're like, this is different from home.
The first thing, and if I'm not mistaken, comes down from being colonized by the Portuguese in case of Mozambique and the other countries being colonized by the British, is the capital cities are really well developed if you compare to Maputo in terms of infrastructure, organization, stuff, roads, just the basic service being way better in those countries than it was in Mozambique. That was like what really struck me all day, every day. You having like good roads. You go into an hospital and actually having treatment, yes, with queues, but not as much compared with Mozambique. That was the first one. The second one was
by the way, although I have not been to Maputo, you're right. I mean, I've been to other ex-Portuguese colonies, and I mean, I guess Angola is an exception. Angola is a very rich country, so their capital is actually pretty good, but
that's not from the Portuguese. Sorry to cut you off, but that's not from the Portuguese. It's from them doing the business with other countries as well.
Oh, I see. But and a lot of it, I'm just saying that they got a lot of wealth from their petroleum.
Exactly. But it's from them. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. In other words, that wealth poured in, and so that's why I'm just saying it's not really Portuguese in that sense. I'm just thinking of other Portuguese, ex-Portuguese
you
countries
have Goa
I've been to.
In India.
I've never been there. Have you been there?
No, it's my wish.
Okay.
It's on my wish list. There is Brazil.
There's Cape Verde.
There is Cape
I'm
Verde.
thinking just Africa. There's
Cape
5
Verde.
of them in Africa.
Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau.
Guinea-Bissau, which is a shit show. I mean, that place is... right in front of the fucking presidential palace, there are potholes. In front of the president, it's like huge holes in the street in front of the presidential palace in Guinea-Bissau, and Cape Verde is again kind of an exception because it's kind of a way out there. And and there's Angola, Mozambique,
São Tomé e Príncipe.
That's right. You're right. That's it. That's the 5th one, and that's another impoverished, kind of screwed up. As far as infrastructure is concerned. Okay, so what other things that set foot on that you thought were interesting?
I think it's that, and I think it's also the respect for the rules that comes with those infrastructures. I think most of my friends that come to Mozambique, they go, "Do people here get reward for crossing the wrong side of the street?" And I'm like, "That's bully. You are in my country. Respect me." But I think, because they have those nice infrastructures, they go really by the book, like if you are in a museum and you expect to take photos, people won't take photos. But in Mozambique, you really need to cater to the people and don't take the photos. And I think there was also they're so by the rule, where Mozambique is more like, you want it, do it, why live in the present sort of thing. And I think that's the 2 main things that really struck me from the neighboring countries from Mozambique.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that's probably true. But again, that's relative because when you say following rules and that kind of stuff and law abiding, that's relative to the African culture,
exactly,
and African continent.
Exactly.
Because when you go to Switzerland, a Swiss person who goes to Nairobi, they'll be like, "What the hell?" Nobody follows any rules. Or a Japanese person will be like,
no.
You're saying that Tanzanians follow rules? Excuse me? What?
Absolutely. I was in Putrajaya. It's the political capital of Malaysia. And they have cameras everywhere. And if you dare to just cross the street in the wrong place or throw, something on the floor, like in 5 minutes, you have a police officer with you,
Really?
escorting you out of the city forever. You get banned from the city. But the city is beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Wow.
And it's quite similar in Singapore as well.
Mozambique has had a lot of resources. I think recently they've been discovering petroleum there.
Again,
yeah. Rediscovering petroleum. Like they found like another
reserve.
Reserve of some sort. Maybe it's not petroleum, maybe it's natural gas. I can't remember what it was.
It was both. Something. It was both, and there is discoveries around precious gemstones and endemic rainforests as well.
Right. So once again, Mozambique has a wonderful opportunity to catapult itself economically. Will it happen this time?
Only the future will tell, and what we do with it. I always say that at least in my opinion, one of the main struggles in African leadership is, if we have that African leadership, it is because we have disempowered people in positions of power. So if you have people in a position of power who themselves, they didn't broke what I call the poverty cycle, when it's not just a matter of cash flow, it's a matter of mindset and understanding community and society, those people will perpetuate poverty from a power level all the way down to the bottom of the pyramid. And that's usually why you see so many corrupt leaders, even though there is already more than enough for them to have, but they don't feel as that. That's the point. And I feel, especially when people sort of go into that strain of thought, they usually think, well, they're just bad and mean people, which might be in some cases, but there is deep work that I believe it should be done, or that those leaders should have done in the first place. But also calling the shots on us, the youth of Africa, we are going to be the next generation of leaders. And we do have a role into saying how we would like to see our resources used, because in the end of the day, they are also ours. And I will argue every day, any day, that the African talent is the biggest resource that we have. And, when we have Africans live in Africa forever, that's when really we are sort of like galvanizing the position of Africa as a developing continent and never as a developed nation and society as a whole.
Got it. So let me see if I'm understanding you correctly.
Yeah.
You're saying that the current power structure, the leaders, they come from wealth and comfort, and they're just perpetuating that, as opposed to if the leaders came from somebody who came from an impoverished situation and then rose up the political ranks and eventually became the president of the country, then things would be different? Is that what you're saying? Or
not necessarily.
Okay.
So for me, it's not necessarily if you're coming from a poverty or a more rich background. It comes down that if within your mindset you've realized that there is enough for everyone to go by, first and foremost. And for most of the places, regardless of where you are coming from, you can still hold into that mindset that I need to feed myself and my family, even though you already have enough to do that. And if you go into other sort of societies like India, when, for instance, if you want to go into a position of power, sometimes you even have to ask permission from your family to release you from their duties, from your duties towards them, so that you can really serve the country as a whole. But if you compare with other good politicians or good politics out there, it comes down for understanding that you are there to serve the nation and not just yourself. It's the nation first and then you. But for you to be able to step into the role, you need to understand that you are not in scarcity anymore. And that's the shift that even rich people, I have clients who are like extremely wealthy, but they still have this scarcity mindset that we need to get rid of and replace it to a more abundance mindset. Does it make sense?
Yes. Now I think I understand what you're saying, which is basically that they see the pie as being fixed,
exactly,
as opposed to expanding the pie,
exactly,
and helping expand the pie, and realizing that we can generate more wealth for everybody,
exactly,
as opposed to just having to hoard the resources or hoard whatever economic gains that we have. And you think that that's something that is holding Mozambique back?
I mean, I think so, because it's not just about having the president being, fully uncorrupted. It's like everyone in the journey. And it was actually a discussion we used to have a lot in Mozambique around nurses. So the salary that nurses receive is not, I mean, I told you it's like $120 per month. And, they also have bills to pay. And something that was happening in some places, public hospitals, was that there was a fee for you to deliver a baby in an hospital that you need to pay the nurse so they can cater for you. And, I do acknowledge how dishuman it is for you to not service someone, especially in that moment where you're so vulnerable. And I also understand that the environment is not conducive of you behaving differently. So I'm not sort of validating that, but I'm trying to say is that seeing from where they see, whatever they're doing is validated. And if you have a lot of people in those positions of power where they still think that the pie is fixed, it's going to be really hard to break the cycle. So it's more of a change of mindset that needs to happen, in my opinion, that then gets to be reflected in a change of actual resources that people are having access to in the end of the day.
Okay, got it. And do you think that when you look at South Africa, which is obviously a richer country than Mozambique as far as infrastructure and as far as wealth and as far as businesses and all that stuff, do you see Mozambique closing the gap? And why is it that you think that South Africa is doing better economically than Mozambique?
I wish I had all the answers. One of them, I'll assume.
Well, that's why I called you.
You need to call someone else.
Well, your PR guy told me you have all the answers. No, I'm just kidding.
You can't trust PR people. They always say, they're always selling more than they should. So I'll think education is a big thing, and education is not just formal education; it's also exposure. Because the more you know there are options available for you. And something that I feel the English-speaking colonized countries have that most Portuguese-speaking countries don't have is that clear exposure. Because we have a lot of foreigners coming to South Africa, way more than they come to Mozambique, not just for tourists, but for businesses, because of speaking English and all that stuff. And that really helps open up your mind in terms of what's possible. That's sort of like one of them that I see, like education, as Nelson Mandela will say, is like the base of any society development. And the second one I feel is that, and I really admire this from South Africans, is their sense of unity and like we are South Africans, not necessarily, we are from Johannesburg or from Cape Town, we are South Africans. And that unity really gets them stronger when in fact in Mozambique. It's not that we don't see ourselves as one unified country. It's more like the differences are so huge in terms of the countries. There's like stuff can happen in Maputo without affecting Nampula at all. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's also something that adds into the equation. And that, of course, associating with education. I mean, we were actually speaking with that with my siblings. So my siblings are older than me. And like each one of my siblings saw a different, or grew up in a different Mozambican environment, from like civil war, after war and all that stuff. And we were saying that there was this year in the north of the country where people were just so well educated, but there was not like an industry to take them on jobs creation. And they were educated to be employees, not to have their own businesses. I mean, my sister used to speak 3 languages, and at a point she speak Portuguese, English, and French. And like naturally speaking, right? But she didn't got that, for instance, an industry that will cater their talent and develop, as an example. So I think there is also that to be taken, in consideration in the equation. I don't like to use the past as a reference for the future because we've seen many countries define that. And I think it's more around what we believe as a country that is possible for us. And if we believe that is available for us, and if you're willing to do the work to make it happen. And if you ask me, I feel most people prefer to say where they are instead of changing, if that makes sense to you.
Yes, it does. And I think that, Africa needs more leaders like yourself to really help make some of those changes, because I think that's the only way it's going to climb out of its situation. Now, do you look at your crystal ball and you're seeing the future? What do you think is going to happen in the Southern Africa, which is where you're focused on, Mozambique and South Africa? Do you see what do you see in your crystal ball for the next, let's say, 50 years?
Oh, I see countries starting to work together as one and understanding that unlike many other continents, we are so blessed to have so many countries in just one location, and we working more to, on our differences. I feel, with digitalization and social media and all this stuff, we are getting very, more and more aware of each other as countries and what we are going through. And we are super willing to support each other in our endeavors. So if I had to bet even, I would say that more and more we will see more of like a proper African Union that operates as such. And if not like a whole African Union, at least the SADC being way more active, and not active because of the governments are active, but because the people, they really understand each other and they're traveling within countries and they're getting to know their different realities and they're really coming together to work as one. I would really bet for that.
All right. Inshallah, as they say.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. The first question I was going to ask you, and in fact, it's now going to end up being probably my last question I'm going to ask you, is, looking at the perception of Africa as a continent, and when you travel, as you have all over the world, what is the biggest misconception that you would like to shake foreigners, non-Africans, and say to them, hey, this common belief, this widespread belief about our continent is wrong, misleading, or etc. What would that be? What would you like to?
That Africa needs to be saved. I feel most people end up actually failing to help Africans because they come with this sense that Africa needs to be saved, that we don't know what we're doing. And if you stop to think, for many African people, our life is not horrible. We know it needs to improve, but for most of us, it's not horrible. So having someone that's not African at all or haven't lived in here coming us to tell us what's right and what's wrong, it's like, you have your own house. The United States is not the paradise, You have your own problems. Why don't you work on that? And maybe you want to share your learnings with us. And we get to decide how we are going to implement that and where we actually want to go. Because the whole saving thing comes from thinking that we are the victims and there is, an ideal and we need to go and navigate towards that. And they might not be what the Africans themselves want. And I'm not saying that Africa doesn't need help by any means. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying it's not saving. It's collaboration and co-creation that we really need in the end of the day.
Commerce.
Exactly.
It's it is because
it is.
So who should hire you?
So it's people who understand that life is not just about making money. It's about making money, yes, because you need to live your life and you should live your life the best way you can. But you're also inclined to serve and have an impact in the world, a positive one. And you are willing to do it from a place that feels right for you. Because I feel the American dream, that's not for everyone. Not everyone has the American dream. We need to start being honest about what our dreams and what success looks like for us and be willing to do that work. That might imply you need to let go of some limiting beliefs. That might imply you do different strategies, but it's like that combination of impact, income, of integrity that all of my clients, they have. And that's why they succeed in the end of the day, regardless of being a corporation or NGO or a government or an entrepreneur growing their business.
Where do you want to expand your business?
Yeah, so right now we work mainly with one-on-one and some small and medium-sized organizations. And I feel that we've been playing very well on one-on-one power, sort of like frontline power management. I'm really keen to go deeper into, that people are saying people in positions of power, they are still disempowered to make a change. That way, it's just easier for us to manage our power in a way that feels good, not just for us, but for everyone around it. Does it make sense?
It does. I'm just trying to imagine somebody who's listening to this and says, okay, why should I hire Julio? What situation could I recommend Julio? Like, just give me a practical example to help somebody, decide when to send you an email or call you and say, hey, I really could use your help here.
For sure. So there is, for instance, entrepreneurs who either are completely stuck and they have no idea where to do next, or they have this big dream and they just don't know how to get there. And for organizations and I found, especially with medium and large organizations, sometimes the leaders are so well intended, they just don't know how to navigate an organization that seems to be stuck in their ways. So there is like a lot of fear within the organization. Mistakes happens all the time, the same mistakes again and again and again. For me, that's clearly like a knowledge system issue that can be solved, but it comes down specifically for the vision of that you have, not necessarily about your current situation. But if you have a vision that you know is bigger than yourself and you are ready to play full out, because believe me, I will challenge you, then I'm the right person to call. But you need to have that vision, or at least willing to have it and willing to do the work to make it happen.
Got it. How can they find you?
As a good millennial, I'm in social media. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at JulioMuhorro. I know that's hard. So it's JulioMuhorro. Or you can find my company, Sharing Knowledge International, on LinkedIn. You'll find like a beautiful logo there. That's me. Head me a message. I'll be happy to chat with you.
I'll put a link in the show notes. I really appreciate your time, Julio, and I wish you the best. I sometimes fall. I go into both sides of the fence with Africa. Sometimes I'm like just like super positive, super upbeat, and other times I'm like, oh God, what a disaster! This thing has got so long to go and get their act together. They got so many issues and problems, and how are they ever going to get out of this hole? But when I talk to people like you, I have hope and confidence that they're going down the right track, because I think somebody like you as a leader, you're going to make big changes. And I think I really salute you, and I hope you do really well. In fact, I don't hope. I know you're going to do very well in life. So
thank you so much, Francis. Then my job is done. Yeah. You have hope now.
Yes. You can now retire already. You're done. I've given you your blessing, and have a nice day.
Absolutely.
It was only so easy. And that ends this episode of the WanderLearn podcast, where we explore travel, technology, and transformation. If you'd like to see the show notes with links to what we've talked about, go to wanderlearn.com and click on this episode. If you'd like to connect with me, just remember Tapon. That's my first initial and my last name. Tapon is always my social media username. My website is ftapon.com. Do you want to leave me an anonymous voicemail where you can make a comment or ask a question? Then go to speakpipe.com/ftapon. Furthermore, if you'd like to get rewarded for supporting my projects, then go to patreon.com/ftapon. That's where you can pick up some remarkable rewards for as little as $2 a month. Now, 5 quick favors. Number 1, subscribe to the WanderLearn podcast. 2, download it. 3, share it. 4, review it. And 5, sign up for my newsletter at wanderlearn.com. Our theme music was composed by Eric Stratman. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.